Okay, so we all know what nerve damage is and what it means to be compressing the ionosphere, compressing the elemental circuitry, and an increase of nerve damage over time-space vectors, and measuring that against Bardo, the implosion point. So I'm going to give you an example of what I call a partial file share of a file that I shared this afternoon with Peter Santello, who has a beautiful channel. He's in the Hawaiian Islands right now, as I remember it, because I saw a video he did, I guess it was recently, but it was up today. I just saw it today, where he was on Oahu. Okay? So I shared with him the truth, the absolute truth. So I gave him an example, okay, of how this works, how an energy harvesting system works when it comes to compressing ions to implode, compaction. Consciousness that is compacting itself because it's being forced. Now you're into the unity force. Remember, hey, don't try and force anything. It'll just fall in place naturally. And when you're totally relaxed, experiencing the still point of an eternal flame, the innocence of awareness, the real true still point. And so I shared with him in 1961, I lived in a house that my parents bought in Orange County, California, and this was a custom-built home by Meredith Homes. It was built by the Meredith Company that were building custom-built homes. The address is 13421 Molina Drive in Tustin, California, but that's a Santa Ana, California mailing address because it was in an unincorporated area of Orange County in what was called North Tustin. Okay? And so that piece of property, pounds per square inch, as that relates to vacuum. The pounds per square inch of that property was being sold for $41,000 as an electronic number in the visual display. Okay? So my father at the time was an aeronautical engineer, and as I remember it, he was pulling $60,000. Oh, the six. There must be a relationship between 4 and 6 or 4 and 1 and 6 over time-space vectors. Pay the man, as that relates to insurance, investment vehicles, and solar bonds. Solar panel codes. The codes, the Ekaveka codes, the value of the Ekaveka codes, the investment vehicle of Ekaveka codes. So $41,000, okay, in 1961 was what my parents paid for that house. If you go price that now, it's 7 figures. That means that in order to occupy as an occupant the same space where that house is at on that number, 13421, you're now going to be asked to pay 7 figures for that same number over time-space vectors. Do the math. That means that the units of consciousness that represent an electrical potential of a future memory that wants to occupy or live in that house is going to be forced to its own consciousness, if it chooses, to occupy that space, to experience the space, the PSI in that space that means that they're going to be compressing their ions as an anxiety-driven program in order to experience that space. Because the amount of anxiety, which is the amount of nerve damage that is required to acquire that many electrons as a number, to experience that space, is going to do enormous nerve damage to that formation of consciousness over time-space vectors. That's what the system does. Because it's vampiric, which is not natural. That is your anti-Christic spiral, which is anti-life. So you see what happens when it comes to space and pressure-sensitive information codes as numbers.